Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to, and what it says the crypto blast on the thing, so I definitely typed in as grain blast, but welcome to the.
I was so confused.
I was like, something's going seriously wrong here. Crypto blast was about an hour ago. But anyway, welcome to the grain market blast with the glorious, the glamorous, the goddess of grain herself, Angie Setzer, where Angie will be providing us with a rapid roundup of the latest pricing flows and market moving news in agricultural markets, grain markets, etc., with it, also a little look at geopolitical news in general, because it all impacts everything else. Well, yeah, it's all the same thing at this point. But anyway, before we move on, I'll get the legals out of the way. Nothing discussed on the podcast is trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ or indeed myself or Angie. Angie, over to you. What has been occurring?
Oh, not too much. It's Monday. We're here. Harvest is progressing at a very, very rapid pace here across much of the country. And so that is a good thing, I guess. It'll be nice and quick to see what all we have where. And so that's the biggest thing that I'm focusing on right now. A lot of folks, we won't obviously with the USDA or with the government shutdown. The USDA is not operational either. And so we will not get the crop progress updates. We won't get export inspections, none of those things. Those little data pieces that we get, little kernels of data along the way, we won't get those. But, if you look at it anecdotally, we are probably, 3/4 of the way along when it comes to bean harvest, well ahead of average. I think average is usually 35-40%. Now, of course, the crop progress number could have showed who knows what. But, like I said, anecdotally, just kind of talking to farmers, merchandisers, folks across the countryside, soybean harvest has probably been one of the quickest harvests that we've seen in quite some time. And one real big point of interest for me, at least here in the Eastern Corn Belt, is that we really haven't seen the market get too weak or too hairy. Like even
Right, yeah.
here, in Michigan over the weekend, or Friday afternoon anyway, we had a local elevator firm their bean basis. So they improved their bean basis, and like I said, probably a good portion of the state here, at least us, across much of Michigan, I would put us at 70% harvested, maybe even further than that by the end of the day today. We'll see, like I said, yields so far for soybeans have kind of been in line with a year ago, which is, a little bit better than expected, at least because of, with the lack of rainfall, but still mostly in line with a year ago from what I'm hearing from most folks out there. Important to remember that a year ago's yield was 3 bushel to the acre below the current USDA estimate, and that would result in 240 million bushels. If we were to see a 3 bushel to the acre reduction in yield overall, it would take 240 million bushels off from overall ending stock estimates and put us at a 55 million bushel carryout. Obviously, that's not going to happen, but there is room for production declines based on what we're hearing, which could offset some of this China trade conversation that we have going on as a whole on that side. So we'll be watching the harvest progress, the soybean harvest especially, because that's the commodity that everyone has been screaming the most doom and gloom about. We are hearing some interesting things in the Western Corn Belt, folks kind of putting soybeans in what has long been held as corn space. That's not it's not the big deal that people are making it out to be. We have a very different dynamic this year that we're watching. Obviously, we have a very large corn position, a corn export book on, and so you're going to have more in the way of quick ship opportunities out of the Western Corn Belt, out of the Dakotas, places like that. We are seeing, soybeans put in ground piles, which is, emergency.
I beg your pardon?
Yeah, it's a temporary storage. And like some folks need to recognize that like these piles that we're putting these beans, like it's flat storage. It's going to be taken care of. They're going to be picked up at some point. They're put away, at a good moisture. Like we used to put soybeans in our fertilizer storage all the time. Like now people panic. It was clean. It was all of the things that it needed to be. But if you have flat storage, you know what I mean? Like as a merchandiser, you're in a market structure, especially like this one with wide basis and weak movement at the start of the year and all these other things, you're going to put beans wherever you can put them. And the biggest thing to me that I'm watching is how quickly this harvest happened, and to not see epic catastrophes everywhere along the river, or, even out west, there's places where folks have been kind of surprised at the lack of bottleneck, if you will, and so we'll just kind of continue to watch that. We'll see what China's got up their sleeve this week. We heard at late in the day on Friday about this $1 trillion investment conversation that we're
Yep.
having. Like China's like, hey, if you treat us better, we'll spend a lot of money in your country. And so we'll see, obviously there's some communication there and things like that. But the biggest thing I want to express, and I don't think people are getting this, like, basically right now, the USDA is forecasting that China's going to import around 12 million metric tons. Like if you look at, 12 to 15 million metric tons is kind of where the USDA is sitting. Now, yes, China has zero tonnage bought currently, but they need about that much to get them through November, December into January. And so just pump the brakes a little bit, on this whole woe is us. Like if I were another outside commentator, like the most beautiful thing though is I've been able to tell who really hasn't ever paid attention to soybeans before now.
Right. And we've mentioned before this. So this is, this is sometimes what I like about these extreme times and these times when kind of things are kind of moving fast is, the mask drops on a lot of people and you realize, hang on a second, you clearly don't actually know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And that's what, and I've been kind of working on this sort of, and maybe this sounds super silly, but like, a lot of times people ask me, like, what is a merchandiser? What does a grain merchandiser do? And I can tell you with my whole entire chest that a grain merchandiser is an economist with real life experience. Like they've actually had their boots on the ground and experienced what supply and demand feels like in real time versus just assessing it on paper, because there are two very, very, very different things that happen. And so, for me, the market structure itself, is incentivizing folks to keep soybeans out of the pipeline and put them away. And the corn market is encouraging you can do what you want with corn. You can ship it, you can move it, you can whatever. The price stinks, but the market itself is solidly, looking for demand. So that's really where we're at there. Obviously, a lot of focus on what's going on with China. We'll have very limited government data this week. I think we do get a stopgap vote maybe in the Senate today. I don't think anyone's expecting that to do much of anything. And so we'll probably be without a USDA report on Thursday.
Well,
Go ahead.
speaking of which, I don't know if you saw the post just now, but on the USDA website, it does say big warning kind of sign. It says, due to the radical, and I quote, this is the USDA website, due to the radical left democratic shutdown, this government website will not be updated during the funding lapse. President Trump has made it clear he wants to keep the government open and support those who feed, fuel, and clothe the American people. So, yes, they're not pulling their punches.
Yes, no, they're not waiting at all. And so that's why, I saw that. I was actually kind of disappointed because I went on the FAS website this morning. That's not being updated, And so that's the part that kind of makes me chuckle too, is we have a lot of these new folks kind of attending grain demand analysis here, and they don't even have access to the proper data because much of the trade data comes from the USDA's website, and she's shut down, And so even if you ask Chat GPT, it's not going to give you the right numbers, like it's just there, it's messy. And then I guess one of the things that I think has been most surprising to me in all of this is just how much information is lacking when it comes to trade and all of these other things. But I guess, it is what it is. So we'll see how the rest of it plays out. I made a joke last week, take a shot, and then you see someone on the outside of ag talking about soybeans. Please don't do that. So just that's not. Otherwise, all the other stuff that we're paying attention to, obviously Russia and Ukraine, no one is really paying attention. But you saw Ukraine launch one of their deepest strikes. I think it was 800 miles, basically 1,600 kilometers, give or take. That was at the end of last week. But then over the weekend, Russia, got crazy with the cheese whiz a little bit, started launching some pretty major attacks. That's a Beck quote, by the way, from the But it's one of those things where you're just seeing a very, very big escalation. A lot of people are like, well, they're not hitting ports and they're not hitting, vessels, yada, yada, yada. Honey, they're hitting rail bridges. They're hitting gas terminals. They're hitting energy. Like we're out of electricity. We barely have fuel to get us around across parts of Russia and some of these other things. Like you don't have to blow up a port to slow down grain movement. And so, we're seeing that in cash values. Sovicon came out today with a big estimate. So this is the thing I want to kind of remind us all of this in 30 days. Sovicon came out today and said, hey, Russia's going to export 5 million metric tons of wheat this month. Watch that. If it's below 3 million metric ton, they have a massive problem going on. So go ahead and write it down. You guys remind me of this in another 30 days or so, because these claims that we're going to see these big exports coming out of Russia, so far we're running 3 months in a row and not seeing what folks are expecting. So that's something that I'm paying really close attention to, simply because that's really what matters. And yeah, beyond that, we'll just kind of see how everything plays out. Hopefully we can get some peace in the Middle East this
Yep,
week. That
that'd
would
be
be
nice.
nice.
We're not asking for much.
No, not yeah, right. Hopefully it's only been the thing I've been thinking, we've been asking for what, 20, 35, well, all of history, but
60
really a
years,
lot
yeah,
over.
600
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. But if we could get something sorted, with Gaza and some of these, it just helps to remove that risk of contagion. And if we could
Yeah,
get a populace that doesn't feel like they're on the risk of having to run, and some of these other things, like if you're worried about whether you have to evacuate in another however many whatevers, you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
you don't eat, you don't stock up, no one does. And so it'll be interesting to see if that kind of smooths things out a little bit. But, beyond that, it's just going to be a big week of harvest. We've got some rain expected over the next couple of days, and then she warms right back up again and dries back out. And so the biggest thing that I can say right now that we're watching is how quickly the farmer is able to put the crop away. And if we see signs of harvest pressure or overwhelming supply. If we don't see signs of harvest pressure and overwhelming supply, then this adds to the long list of countries that are anticipating record supplies that have managed to put them away without issue. And I think that, really means that we need to start asking questions about some of these crop size estimates that we're getting, because, if we're truly harvesting a 16.5 billion bushel corn crop, we should see it show up
Right.
in the cash market.
Well, that's what we were saying yesterday. On Friday, wasn't it? It's like you can't hide this.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't, and so we've done whatever. And so we'll see kind of how this thing plays out here over the next couple, 3 weeks. But yeah, that's about it. That's all she wrote for the most
So
part.
she wrote. Well,
we will get the Trump update tomorrow, the bailout package. I remain hopeful that they have listened to people who aren't lobbying and not input suppliers, and are looking at the other ways that they could help to support the nation's farmer without it being a direct payment. But we'll see. We should know more by maybe the end of the day, tomorrow, whatever. And that'll have some influence as well on, farmer selling here to wrap up the end of the year and some of these other things.
And speaking of tomorrow, there will be no Grain Market Blast because I will be running through I'll be running through the airport trying to get my flight to Vegas. Regarding Grain Market Blast for the rest of the week, I will be in Vegas, so we're gonna have to stick a pin in this. I will liaise with Angie most mornings to work out what level I am coping at. But look,
we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, put it this way: every podcast I do this week will be a bonus.
Yeah.
But Angie, thank you so much for your time as always. An absolute star. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. We really do appreciate you. Whatever you're doing, stay safe, keep it tight, and we'll see you when we see you. Goodbye.
Have a good one, guys.